Bonjour tout le monde et bienvenue à la séance du conseil du 12 décembre 2022. So welcome everyone to the monthly council meeting of December 12th, 2022. I'd like to welcome everyone who's online tonight. It's nice to be at home instead of coming out into the cold. But we have people here, so welcome everyone here as well. So before we start with today's agenda, we'll start with l'adoption de l'ordre du jour. Est-ce que j'ai un proposeur?
Je propose.
Appuyeur?
Je seconde, Monsieur le maire.
Merci. Et donc, avec ça, on va se lever pour un moment de silence, s'il vous plaît. Merci. Oui. Avant d'aller à la période de questions, before we go to the period of question period, we'll start with 1.2, l'ouverture.
Je propose, Monsieur le maire, d'autoriser l'émission d'un bon de commande à l'entreprise Conteneur Expert Inc., entreprise ayant soumis le plus bas prix pour la fourniture et la livraison de 2 conteneurs de 20 pieds au montant global de 44 104,72 $, toutes taxes comprises, conformément à la soumission 7145 datée du 24 octobre et la soumission 7121 datée du 20 octobre 2022.
Est-ce que quelqu'un vote pour?
J'appuie, juste pour qu'on puisse voter.
Merci. Est-ce que quelqu'un vote pour? Est-ce que quelqu'un vote contre? Unanime. Merci. Et là, on est rendu à la période de questions, 1.3. On a reçu plusieurs questions en ligne ce mois-ci. Est-ce qu'il y a quelqu'un dans la salle qui n'a pas envoyé sa question en ligne? Monsieur, si vous voulez vous présenter au micro, on va prendre votre question tout de suite. Sophie. Non, le monsieur est derrière vous. On va lire ceux en ligne tout de suite après. Not past my bedtime, I hope.
Security contract. 2019, you awarded a 3-year contract for $1,900,000, which averages about $635,000 a year. In your budget of 2019, you got civil security at $282,000 ballpark. 2020, $43,000 on one page, on another page 42. 2021, you have 392 on one page, 379 on another. 2022, you got a budget of 420, but the contract was issued at 750. 2023, you got 817 on one page, 752 on another page, but the contract was awarded for 772,000 ballpark. I got all these numbers. Yeah,
I'm wondering if some of those are agglomeration numbers?
No, they're all from your budget.
Okay, very good.
So that's what I'm saying. It's a lot of, I can give you a copy. I don't mind meeting with either you or a council member in January that you can go over these numbers, because it doesn't make sense. They're your numbers.
Okay, so if you want to do you want to leave that with us right now? You can leave that with us? Leave that with Madame la greffière.
Name and phone number.
Name, phone number, and we'll get back to you to meet you before Christmas. I'll forget after. After Chris. All right. So, thank you for your question. Est-ce qu'il y en a d'autres personnes qui n'ont pas posé des questions en ligne? Sinon, je vais commencer avec les questions en ligne. Okay, donc, question number 1 comes from Mr. Levine at 60 Tobe Lake, which I believe is Vaudreuil. Exactly. Question 1, meeting with Professor Parisa Area regarding pollutants. The day after October Council meeting, you and several councillors had a Zoom meeting with the recipient of the award of Canada's top female chemist. She told you that nanoparticles of black carbon, a deadly pollutant, has been found in residential areas of Dorval. Anyone searching the internet for these harmful effects of nanoparticles can see that they are responsible for cancer, cardiovascular, and other diseases. For what reason has Dorval not informed all the residents of the problem, nor looked into informing the over 20,000 residents of what they can actually do to protect their health? Well, Mr. Levine, thank you for the question. There's a lot of things here that I can't speak to. You know, I'm not a doctor, and I don't think anyone up here are doctors. This is really a question for Santé Publique to respond to. We have discussed it. I know that, and I may have given you the false information. It said we had recapped in October. The recap was actually in November. I think we've addressed this issue at council a number of times. So I would suggest to you, if you have some concerns, let's bring it up with our deputy. You can certainly write to your deputy, and if residents are concerned, I think that's something they can do as well, and that would be Mr. Ciccone. Effects of BCPs on fetuses. In October, a study regarding black carbon nanoparticles appeared in The Lancet, a prestigious medical journal. Autopsies in Aberdeen, Scotland showed black carbon nanoparticulates present in the brains, lung, and livers of aborted fetuses. The same pollutant was shown to exist in the baby side of placentas tested postpartum. We are rapidly approaching winter, the worst time of the year for the appearance of black carbon nanoparticles in Dorval. Would it be possible for Dorval to encourage everyone who is pregnant in Dorval to look into purchasing air purifiers immediately, that they are capable of removing nanoparticles from the air? I stress nano because nanoparticles can enter the bloodstream. Again, Mr. Levine, I think anyone who is pregnant should do whatever they feel is best to protect themselves from any kind of danger, be it smoking, drinking. Unfortunately, nanoparticles, they're outside. We know they're outside. So I'm not sure, how do you protect yourself from that short of moving away from Dorval? But I think this is it's a public health issue, and that really the questions should be pointed towards our M&A. And in that respect, I can't also make recommendations about what kind of filters to utilize. I personally buy the best possible filters I can purchase for my home, and I clean my air ducts, and I suggest people do that as well. But I mean, that's everyone's personal choice. What have you been doing? That's question 3. What have you been doing regarding BCPs? I met with you in May 2nd. You agreed to contact the Ministers of Health and Environment and inform them of the pollution problem and ask them what we should tell citizens. You ignored my numerous follow-ups And I only learned via access of information that you haven't contacted either. I'm just going to point out right now that that's false. Mr. Levine, we've discussed this. I have sent a letter. You mentioned at one point at a meeting that you protect your family with furnace air filters. Yeah, that is true. And from what I've learned, it doesn't appear that any house filter exists that can trap nanoparticles. And that may be true too, and I just alluded to that before. Will you please check info that will benefit you and your family? I think at this point I've answered that question as best as I can, and I encourage Mr. Levine to contact me if you wish to discuss further. I think it's important that we contact the right levels of government, and public health is definitely that level of government. So that was question number 1. Deuxième question, Monsieur Denis Briffaut, au 255 Avenue Roy. Pas dans la salle? Non. Question 1. Le réseau Hydro-Québec, dans certains quartiers construits dans les années 50-60, est en très mauvais état, ce qui cause de nombre anormalement élevés de panne. L'isolant en fibre naturelle des câbles est endommagé et manquante sur des conducteurs de basse tension, ce qui constitue un danger grave pour les courts-circuits et un risque d'incendie. Suite des plaintes, Hydro-Québec a refait le câblage dans les secteurs compris entre Roy-Lapage et Carson-Dawson en 2017. Nouveau poteau câble moderne avec un isolant en matière synthétique. Il semble que cette mesure a été prise par le bureau de chef sous la pression des plaintes de résidents de ce secteur, mais n'a pas été étendue aux autres quartiers plus anciens. Est-ce que la ville de Dorval et le service des incendies sont au courant du risque? Et si oui, est-ce que des mesures de suivi seront prises? Monsieur Briffaut, regardons, on a eu cet automne une couple de discussions avec Hydro-Québec. On sait qu'on a beaucoup de plaintes à Dorval. Hydro-Québec nous dit que les taux de panne sont normaux en considérant différentes villes ou arrondissements alentour de nous. Je ne suis pas sûr si c'est vrai, mais c'est leur données. Oui, c'est sûr que si les résidents se plaignent, des fois, ça va aider à accélérer des processus. Qu'est-ce qu'ils nous répondent? C'est qu'ils font des inspections régulières. Je sais que vous avez vu Hydro-Québec en train de couper des arbres en arrière, dans les cours arrière où les fils passent. Donc, pour nous, on continue à travailler avec Hydro. On reste en contact avec eux autres. Et on va continuer à faire ça. Soyez conscients qu'on est connecté à une sous-station ici à Dorval, qui est quand même assez vieille, et une grosse partie de l'ouest de la ville. Votre quartier, par exemple, et le mien, on est connecté sur un réseau qui réside à Dollard-des-Ormeaux, et on sait que ce réseau-là, et on le sait parce que Hydro nous l'explique, est vieil et problématique. Donc, on continue à mettre des pressions. Si vous voulez en discuter plus, vous avez juste besoin de m'appeler. Prochaine question est de M. Fernando Pellicer at 210 Neptune.
Good evening.
Good evening.
First question. McEachern Stone Walls. Last month, Mr. Mayor, you confirmed that the tender documents by EXP Inc. for the renovations foreseen for the lakeshore entrance to the new St. Charles Park should be ready by December. My question is, what is the specific scope of work specified for the McEachern Estate stone walls? I am fully aware that it is only part of the entire package of this entrance, but these historic walls are important to this entrance. Thus, my concern as to how the restoration work will be carried out and what will remain of the walls once the work is completed.
Thank you for the question. I can't answer that question in the way that you phrased it because we haven't, I still have to meet with council and discuss with them the final design plans. Once those are done, then we'll go, we'll give that information to XP so that they finish their plans. At some point, you'll go to tender, but we're not quite there today.
Okay.
So I can't tell you the process because we haven't actually confirmed the final design.
Fine, that's once you know, I guess, hopefully in January?
I would imagine.
Hopefully, okay. All right, again, on the McEachern stone walls, the professional services mandate to restore the McEachern stone walls was sole source to EXP Inc., being the professionals currently working on the St. Charles Park renovations. My question is, will the execution of the work required for the renovation of the the Lakeshore Road entrance to the park, which includes the restoration of the McEachern Estate stone walls, be issued to the current contractor working on the park via a change order? Or will this project be issued for a public tender?
Well, I think I just answered that question. XP is responsible for plan de vie.
Yes.
And then after that, it'll be going to tender. So I can't tell you who's going to do it because we're still at the plan de vie stage.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah.
I believe there is a limit on what tenders could be called within the scope of a contract of this nature? Because the costs that we're looking at here are substantial. They're not just $100,000 of fix and repairs here. You're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars in terms of what that entrance could cost. Is there a limit on what scope of work can be done by change order within a contract?
No.
No, there's no limit.
No, and we're not there either because we haven't finalized the work to be done.
Okay.
So, to say that it's going to cost hundreds it's just like plucking an apple out of a tree. I don't know what that number is.
No, I can understand that you would have difficulty in evaluating that, but I have an impression of the costs that are involved. Okay, McConnell Estate stone walls. The answer I received last month regarding my question as to who owns the McEachern Estate stone walls was confirmed that some of the walls are on public land while other parts are on private land. I can understand, given the proximity to the street curb, that this may be not a clear-cut issue. However, that does not minimize the need to know who owns these walls and who is responsible for their upkeep. My question is, given that some parts of the McConnell Estate walls are on public land, will the city undertake to identify which parts of the wall belong to the city? I know Monsieur Rouleau sent me an email this morning addressing some of this question, and that this is being looked at currently as to what, who owns what, and and whose responsibilities are regarding these walls as to what needs to be done by somebody. Because it's clear that nothing has been done in a long time. It's clear that these walls are deteriorating, and they needs to be addressed somehow in one way or another, that we, over the next several years down the road, or whatever time it takes, to finding a method to repairing these walls.
Yeah, so I hear what you're saying.
Okay.
I mean, right now, Mr. Rouleau will get back to you with the,
Yeah,
he gave you the answer to this morning.
Fine, excellent, thank you, merci.
Okay, thank you.
Right side.
Thank you. Question number 4 from Mrs. Jones. She's not here. Mrs. Jones at 350 Lakeshore Boulevard. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and councilors. There are several issues and questions that need asking. However, considering it is the season of glad tidings, I will not be asking direct questions, but making some considerations. A big shout out to the city for the renovation started at Royal Dixie Park. Not only the construction to improve the area and safety, but the commitment to the collective garden. Not only will it fill a huge void in the food desert, but also community gardens are places where people come together to grow food, foster growth, give green urban environments. Support lifelong learning and cultivate vibrant communities. This is fantastic news. Applaud to all. I think we thank you for the comment. We appreciate that comment, and we're excited about it too. And I think Chris is just going to take a moment to maybe bring us up to date on it, on where we are.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Mrs. Jones, for the recognition for that. And I think you've presented very well why this is such an attractive project in in that specific location. I do want to highlight and give recognition to the Environment Committee for this in particular, because the council provided some direction to the Environment Committee and said, look, we know that we'd like to look at more community gardens. We would like to start working on food deserts or areas where there's limitations in what produce is available. And ideally, if we're going to establish future community gardens or collective gardens, it would be in places that aren't already green and we're not interfering with existing biodiversity systems. And so it was the Environment Committee and some of the members of that really studied this and then came forward to the council and said, we think that this would be a good fit. So thank you, and I'm happy to highlight that this is some of the work that's come from that group, and that this is just the first stage. So as I think a number of people noticed, the fences are up so that before it gets too cold, some of the demolition work can begin. And then over the winter, there's going to be some work done with, I believe it's over the winter, we're getting that started as well, to work with the neighboring areas to get a sense of what this is going to look like. It is a pilot project. We haven't done a collective garden like this before in Dorval at this scale. So that's why, I mean, it's important to get input from the neighboring areas anyway. But we hope at some point in 2023, the first quarter of 2023, to have some more information about what this will look like. But it is exciting. And I want to reassure everybody that the swings that are in that park are not going to be permanent victims of this project. There will be swings installed somewhere else in the park. We're hoping for the spring.
Thank you, Mr. Von Royce. I'll just simply add that this is a different theme. We're using the word collective and not community garden, and that's because the concept is that the community is going to be involved. These will not be the traditional 4x8 plots that we have up in the community gardens at Surrey. This will be a garden that the community will be involved with, and we look forward to working with various partners. The one that we're reaching out to right now is Graham, who has experience in this, but we know there are going to be others as well. So we're looking forward. Question number 2, name your park. Again, applaud is given to the Name Your Park contest. Great news that the citizens are able to have input on this space. We hope there will be a unanimous consensus. With the name befitting Dorval and its historical background to be chosen. I wonder if any further suggestions can be taken into consideration, like native and significant. Oh, that's question. Yeah. Like native and significant plantings, also some more shade, like the sail shade seen in Millennium Park, to be mentioned. Thank you. So, Mrs. Jones, that park actually has quite a lot of trees in there. So, I think we're looking at it now in the middle of the winter, and we don't think there's a lot of shade, but there's actually more shade than you think. There's actually going to be a unit as well that's being built. If you look on the plans online, it's not a building. It's like a pergola where we plan the plantations. There will be vines that will grow on top, and that'll give a really nice shaded area. In the summertime, it might take a year to get grown to the point where it's going to be full, but it's going to look great, I think. In regards to native plants, that's already part of that was part of the design phase of that project. So native or indigenous plants and trees are to be planted, and the same applies for St. Charles Park. And over time, we're going to see how that goes, and of course, we're going to continue that with any future projects. So I think that's a good step forward. So thank you for that question. The holiday market, question number 3. Once more, congratulations for holding the market again this year, opening with the tree lighting and Santa's arrival. We're well attended with close close to 3,000 people that weekend. It was very well attended. It has been noted that there's been some change-ups from last year, a good move, as it's an ever-evolving event. Would the city and its partners consider having a debriefing session after the market in the New Year's? It could be very interesting and beneficial for the merchants in business to have the roundtable discussion, to see what worked, what didn't work. Thoughts with the collective mind lead to great things. Also to include citizens' involvement with a Q&A, similar to the ones here at the council meeting. There are some good ideas out there in the community which could improve the success of the market. At this time, I would like to extend my best wishes to you, Mr. Mayor, and to all the council members and your families for a very happy Christmas, joyeux Noël à tous, a very happy, healthy, successful New Year in 2023. Thank you for that question and well wishes. I believe Monsieur Lesage will maybe just make a comment.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. First of all, thank you very much for your email and your comments. Well taken. I personally visited the marché on Saturday, and my wife spent up to $50 of just different products that is available there. So I recommend to everybody to go and take a look. You'll be amazed with all the products that there is, and especially that there is a booth that have been set up for our local merchants that are there exposing their goods available for you, mittens and all kinds of scarves and all that, so it's really attractive to everybody, okay? I've got to say that there are subcommittees, and every subcommittee we've met throughout the year at least, I'm going to say 8 times, okay? And we've got a meeting to meet again in the month of January, where every subcommittee we will come up with a postmortem of their success and what we need to work on. Okay, so that's crucial, so we can even make it, as we did this year, better than the prior year. Okay, talking about statistic, we have somebody that's there taking, asking people a question. As the mayor pointed out, there was 2,764 visitors. 40% of them were from Dorval, 15 from Lachine, and 24 from the West Island. And there was even somebody from the other cities, one person from Rimouski that came out and visited us. So you can see that there's success here, okay? Commerce Dorval, just to let you know, is responsible to meet with the merchants to see their comments, what they have. And so far, there hasn't been very much comments, but it's all, I'm assuming, no comment is good comments, okay? Please, if you can go and visit it on this coming Sunday, there's going to be the young entrepreneurs that are going to have a few booths available, and they're going to show what they've been working on for the past year. So if anybody's got a comment or from the general public, please send me an email, give me a call, and I'll be more than happy to bring it up to our committee, your concerns. Okay, so thank you very much, Mrs. Jones, and have a happy holidays.
Thank you, Mr. Lesage. Next question is question 5 from Teresa Glodicki at 291 Hanfield Circle. I don't believe she's here. Oh, there you go. You want to come up?
No, I'll stay here. It's okay.
You want to read it from there? No?
We can read it. I'm okay.
Your question 1, why is Mrs. Alpin, VP of Urbanisme, at BC2, working in revising Dorval's urban plan, yet linked also as a lobbyist for a North American group near the shopping center? This appears to me to be a conflict of interest. Why should anyone be responsible for defining proper land use, yet trying to increase the number of stories of North American group? Shouldn't she be required to step down from her position at BC2? Perhaps the contract should be given elsewhere. Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, Madame Alpin is not working at revising Dorval's urban plan at all. She's in fact a consultant or a lobbyist. She's a registered lobbyist in the province of Quebec. And any company or promoter, developer that wants to work or to build a project in a city has to have a registered lobbyist registered so that they can discuss with our urban planning department. That's the law, and that's been like that since 2018? 2011. After the Charbonneau Commission, exactly. So her role at BC2 is to represent North American group in regards to their project alone, no one else. And they're not at all involved in our discussions. She is the vice president in the real estate division, and the person that we're working with at BC2 is Monsieur Duchamp, who is in a separate division, and he's responsible for urban planning for cities. So I don't think anyone here, including Madame Chachina, has spoken to Mrs. Alpin in months, if not years. I don't know why we think that she's trying to change bylaws. That's not her role right now. Right now, she's strictly there to have a channel of communications between North America Group and our urban planning on their present project. As to quitting her job, I certainly can't tell someone to quit their job. That's not something I can do.
No, I just find it's a bit of a conflict of interest. You're on two different levels. I talk to a lot of people within the city, and a lot of people seem to agree with me. It's just out there, sorry.
No, I understand, and
Thoughts are out there.
yeah. No, you don't need to apologize. I think that I think that it's important that we do this project. I think the council is 100% convinced that the best thing to do right now is to do the public consultation. We have residents from across the city who are who want this. I can tell you that I spoke with 3 residents, seniors, at a luncheon last Friday. These are residents who are longtime residents of Dorval who can't find a place to live in Dorval and had to go, they sold their houses and now they're living just across in Pointe Claire, not too far from the Dorval city limits, and that's the only places they can go. And they're desperately asking when some of these projects are going to be built because they want to come back to Dorval. They love Dorval, they grew up in Dorval. So, I think it's important that we get this consultation done. It's important that we do not scare people away from attending. It's the first time we've ever done this in Dorval, where people are going to have, direct input into what we're going to put in our regulations. It has nothing to do with BC2. This is about our community getting out, and I want to be very clear that I hope that people come from all sectors of the cities and participate in the 3 sessions that we're going to have. There's going to be a session for those living in the west, a session for living in the east, and a session for those living on the north side. And everybody needs to participate. This is a vision, and it was said in the newspaper, Montreal Gazette. We need to have a consensus. A consensus is the middle ground, right? There are some people who will take it to each extreme, but what we need is that middle ground, the vast majority, that's the middle ground, because this is what we're going to live with for the next 30, 40 years. And I think we all have to be careful what we say and how we interpret what is going on, because I want people to come. I don't want them to feel that somehow this thing is stacked against them, and it's not at all. We definitely want to make sure that people are there, they participate, and they tell us. Because what they tell us is what we're going, all of us here, is what we're going to adopt from recommendations into our urban plan. What that looks like, I don't know today. So that's my feeling on this, and I really hope that we don't create a situation where people are scared to come to our consultations. So your question number 2, Marc Rouleau, DG, previously worked at BC2. As Marc Rouleau previously worked at BC2 as a lobbyist and now works for the city of Dorval, wouldn't this be a conflict of interest as defined in the Municipal Ethics and Good Conduct Act of Quebec, of the Quebec government? BC2 is presently redoing its urban plan for Dorval for the area including Bouchard and Dorval Shopping Centre. How could Marc Rouleau remain impartial? Well, the fact is that M. Rouleau left BC2 8 years ago. There's not that many firms where one can work in that field. He left and went into the public sector. He's not a conflict of interest because when we hired him, we had already approved this contract. This contract for the public consultations was done on April 19th, 2022. Okay. Mr. Rouleau wasn't even in the picture there. So I'm not sure how he can be in conflict. He was at that time working for the city of Verdun. Verdun. He applied for the position in June 2022. We had already approved the resolution. And today, he's not in conflict with the consultations at all because he's not the Director of Urban Planning. He's the Director General. The Director of Urban Planning is the one that's working on this project with BC2. I can tell you that he has more than enough work in the city given to him by this council than to be involved in that particular dossier. So there is no conflict of interest. I just don't see where that is. Does that answer your question, or your rebuttal?
You've answered the question.
Oh.
Whether it answers it for thanks, but I know what you're saying.
Okay. Your third question is Montreal and many other cities are trying to vow to protect 30% green space at COP 15. What are Dorval's plans to preserve lands for parks? Bell's Bouchard would be a good place to start. When I calculate the total percent green space and total area in Dorval, I get 2% green space. With all the high rises and condos being added, you must increase green spaces to bring up the total. I'm going to let Mr. Von Roerts speak a few words. I'll say that one of the, we talk about densification as in a bad problem. And I'm not saying that we're going to have skyscrapers in Dorval, but one way to preserve green spaces on some of these future projects is by building up to a certain extent. So what that means, that will come out in the consultation. Mr. Von Roerts, you wanted to say a few words.
Yeah, I'll touch on a few specific projects that tie in with this because it's an excellent point. And often when we talk about the climate crisis and reducing greenhouse gases, the biodiversity element and the preservation of green spaces isn't necessarily at the forefront, and that's kind of one of the major focus of COP15. So where we are with this, there's a lot of consultations coming up in 2023. So we have the consultation with regards to the urban development in certain key parts of the city. We're going to have a public consultation on parks and green spaces and leisure facilities in the city. We're also developing the city strategic plan. And I think all of these is an opportunity to reflect how critical is it for us as a community, for residents to express how important this is for them, the preservation of green spaces. And I also want to emphasize there's a difference between a green space like the grassy area at Millennium Park or Pine Beach Park or Valois Bay Park and an area like Techniparc Oiseau or the Monarch Fields, which are wild, they're fundamental green spaces. The term I'm playing with is rewilding, because that's also something that we should start talking about as a community, is are there areas that we envision should be rewilded so that they will not be green spaces in the traditional sense that we think of, like the parks I just listed, but where it really is kind of a pocket for biodiversity to thrive, but that means that we're not sitting there having picnics in the same sense. So, I mean, I don't have a commitment at this point, and I think it would be premature for us to do that, given all those consultations coming up, but I am really hoping that there will be a very notable request for that to be reflected in the future of our city.
Mrs. Gladicki, I'd also like to add something here, because I think it's important. We talked about it last month, but I'll maybe just speak to it again. I think one of the biggest impacts that we can have on green spaces in Dorval right now is somehow preventing the Golf Dorval from being further developed by ADM. That's the areas that we will generically say as the Champ de Monac, or the lands north of the airport, the federal lands north of the airport. There's been a lot of discussions at COP last week. I spent 3 days in Ottawa, and during my time there, for another reason, I did have some discussions with Parliamentary Secretary Mr. Duguid, who works for the Minister of Environment, Monsieur Guilbeault. I was privileged to have a few minutes with him and to discuss the importance of finding a solution of protecting those lands. I presented a report to him, or I gave him a look at a report, a document that I've been working on with some consultants and Technoparc Oiseau, and we had very good discussions. It didn't lead to concrete action today, but it was an interesting discussion. I also had the opportunity to sit down with what I was hoping was a discussion with the Minister of Transport, Minister Al-Jabra. Unfortunately, he did not attend, but I did speak with Mr. Francis Scarpalagia and Mrs. Anjou Dillon as well. We had a very long chat about the protection of those properties. And what I get out of this is that one of the key focuses that we have to work on, and understand that we've already put the RCI in place. The RCI is preventing for 2 years any further development. Now, could the airport challenge that? They may in 2023, but we'll see. It's bad optics, so I hope they won't, but they could. But so right now, what is really important for us is to talk about the monarch butterfly situation on those properties. We can talk about a big park. That's great. I'm not saying it's not important. That's maybe tomorrow's goal. Today's goal is that we take our presentation that we've made, we deposit it to the committee that's going to evaluate this fate of the monarch in terms of giving it endangered species status in Canada. There are public hearings going on right now. They end on December 20th. We will have our report in there as well. And the reason it's so important is that if the status of the monarch is changed to endangered, fully endangered, not just, it's one level below that right now, it would require the airport to do environmental studies before building. And at that point, it's going to be very, very hard for them to get a building permit when they're really building in an area that is densely populated with milkweed and butterflies. So everything has, there's a lot of things that we have to do. The most important thing I think we have to do right now is support that study. We need to get the monarch on the endangered species list, and then into 2023 we'll start looking at doing some studies to see if parts of Golf Dorval are considered wetlands. But if the monarch is protected, that will make it much more difficult for the airport to build. And at the end, I'm not saying the golf is going to close down. I'm just saying that that becomes a very big piece of property that all residents of Dorval and the Rest Island can use for recreational activities. The day golf is no longer viable, it will become some sort of forest or green space. So that's where we're going. And I wanted to say that it's important. I don't want people to think that we're not having these discussions. I just don't think it's, for me, I would prefer to speak to our counterparts at the federal department one-on-one. I think that's more conducive to having good discussions with them. Okay? Thank you. Thank you for your questions. We'll move on. Madame Cournoyer, 170 McNichol Crescent. Would you like to read your questions?
Yes. In view of the fact that the Vice President of Urbanism of BC2, and that's what she says on her LinkedIn profile, is presently under contract and has been under contract as a lobbyist since 2019 with a subsidiary of North American Development Group, tasked with bringing in zoning changes in the best interests of that developer, and that she continues with the mandate of seeking further zoning changes until May of 2023. In view of the fact that at the same time that its vice president is lobbying for zoning changes for Dorval's biggest developer, BC2 was awarded a contract on the sole source basis for $95,752 by the Dorval City Council of April 2022. In view of the fact that BC2 will be guiding the City of Dorval as to the best options for densifying and developing one of Dorval's prime real estate areas, mainly the Triangle, in view of the fact that BC2 is designing the plans, strategies, consultations, and bylaw for the said Triangle and has been at work for the past 9 months, in view of the fact that though the justification for awarding the contract 9 months ago specifies an urgency in undertaking citizen consultations so as to develop the city's vision, and that none have yet taken place, needs to be asked, and here I come to my first question, in consideration of the Vice President's lobbyist status, in that BC2 is focused on the needs of developers and not the needs of the city, why was this appointment made?
Well, I think I just answered that question when Mrs. Gladicki asked the same question.
I'd like to hear your answer again.
My answer is that she's the vice president of real estate. She's not at all involved in this project.
But that's not what it says on her
She's-
profile.
Pardon?
On her profile, it says that she's Vice President Urbanism.
Okay. We are working, and I don't have her profile right in front of me. I understand that she is vice president of real estate, but that's to be confirmed. We are working with another department in BC2, which is there to support municipalities in developing urban plans. And we're working with Monsieur Ducharme. So that's the answer. Mrs. Alpin is working for BC2 and has absolutely nothing to do with this consultation. She's not involved. We haven't had discussions with her. Is just not involved, period.
Well, her title in her LinkedIn profile is Vice President of Urbanism.
Okay, I'm telling you, she's not at all involved. I can't say more than that.
Okay. My second question, why were there no other urban planning consultants invited to submit proposals so as to avoid this conflict of interest?
So, I can't, if I had to name all the cities that have RCIs going on at this time, we'd be here for a long time. I suspect almost everyone on the South Shore. There's us, and there's some on the North Shore as well. All of these have to be treated within 24 periods. That's the law. And right now, there's not that many companies in Quebec who are able to provide the services to cities. Many of them, for example, we're not even able to look at our timeframes because they're very heavily booked or overbooked with existing clients. So we needed to have this done within a certain time frame. They were the company that was able to deliver what we needed based on our devis, and with that, we went with them. But it has nothing to do with North American Group.
Well,
And
certainly that experience would lead them to get to know the city of Dorval very well.
again, we're not working with Madame Alpin. We're working with someone completely
I'm talking
different.
about BC2, the firm
They-
as an entity.
Okay, I don't understand. We have a project that we wanted, and that's what they're delivering to us.
In a city where there are two universities that form urbanists, I find it really hard to understand that there would not be other urban consultants that could have done this work for Dorval.
Again, I think I've answered that question at the time. This is what this is what was available to us in the time frame that we have. All of the firms that exist in Quebec are extremely busy, and good for them.
Well,
But they weren't available
invited.
to work for us.
They weren't invited. This was a sole source contract.
No, we had discussions with them. We know.
And my third question is, were the council members, particularly the proposer, Mr. Von Roretz, and the seconder of this motion, Maître Leroux, aware that BC2 was fulfilling this dual function?
Well, there's not a dual function, but because I've already answered that she is not at all working on this project with us, but I'll let them answer.
I would just say no. I don't check what the different lobbyists for different projects, their internal affiliation was. But I mean, urban planners also have, and I don't know the details of this, I think our our Director General has a background in urban planning, can speak to it. They're also required to declare conflicts of interest that are clearly prescribed in what is and isn't a conflict of interest, both as an urban planner, but also within their firm of BC2. So from what I understand, BC2 would never have allowed somebody who is in that position to also be working on this contract. So I have confidence in that system, which is why I don't look up every lobbyist to see if they're tied with another contract we're issuing.
I'm just going to add that the fact that she is registered as a lobbyist, to me, is a good thing, because I'm going to say we're all old enough to remember what happened before 2010 with the Commission Charbonneau. The fact that she is registered tells us that, hey, I might have something wrong, or I might be, in a conflict of interest. That being said, BC2, to my knowledge, is about 160 people working there. There's many departments, and as with law firms, there's, might be different clients having different needs or different view. Usually what happens is that you build a wall of China around between the different entities to make sure that people that are not involved in the project don't get the information for that project if they're not specifically involved in that project. So I'm going to say I believe in the system, again, which applies to most professional urbanists, engineer, lawyers, doctors, that, confidentiality toward your client and the client's need will be respected.
Okay, and my question was, were the other city councillors aware of the conflict before all voted unanimously to contract BC2 last April?
I'll let them answer if they wish, only if they wish.
Vas-y, Paul.
I didn't see any conflict because of what Maître Leroux just said.
But you knew that they were a lobbyist when you voted to accept
Yeah.
them. Okay.
En tant que nouveau conseiller, j'avais pas d'expérience, mais je croyais que cette vérification était faite. Vous avez été bonne de trouver ça, parce que là, je suis sur son LinkedIn et c'est marqué Véronique Alpin, vice-présidente urbanisme chez BC2. Donc, comptant plus de 15 années d'expérience dans le domaine du développement immobilier commercial, Véronique est associée vice-présidente au sein de BC2 depuis 2010. Elle s'occupe principalement du volet d'accompagnement en urbanisme. ce que je ne savais pas. Donc, ce n'est pas un mur de Chine, c'est le volet d'urbanisme et s'occupe aussi d'être un lobbyiste pour NADAG. Donc, présentement, je me questionne à la lueur des nouveaux... de qu'est-ce qui se passe en ville, là, des nouvelles informations que l'on a. Donc, oui, je me questionne là-dessus.
Yeah, because it seems to me that the best wall of China would have been to go with another firm. Because
I think
then that
we've- I
way,
think-
that would be clear.
Which,
So, Mrs. Cornway, I think we've answered the question. We'll let Mr. Trudeau, Mr. Lesage answer. And after that, I think we've answered your questions.
Mais juste pour
Madame
terminer, je ne savais pas qu'on avait fait... je ne savais pas qu'il y avait un conflit d'intérêts comme ça.
No, I wasn't aware, but I trust the work that these people do, okay? They do their due diligence, okay, and what goes on. And we've got to trust them. They're the experts.
Well,
Thank you.
it seems to me that if you have to register as a lobbyist, it's so that people get that information, and that information is available to them in making their decisions.
She's registered as a lobbyist, as prescribed by the law, to make sure that there's no inappropriate dealings between developers and contractors, and cities, sorry, developers and cities. It's very clear. This came out of the Charbonneau Commission in 2011. It's a very good move, and it makes sure that everybody is playing on an even playing field.
Yeah, can I ask Madame Chastel to,
Yeah, definitely. So back in April when we approved, I was not aware of this, but I don't believe there's a conflict of interest.
if I can
We'll
just...
just add, and I'll just add that, you know, if we're going to look on Facebook, I'll just add that, not Facebook, but online, that Monsieur Ducharme is listed as Vice President Associé Urbanisme Planification.
I guess if I don't want to beat the dead horse, but you made a point earlier, Mr. Mayor, when we were addressing Mrs. Gladecki's question that I think is pertinent too, is that at the end of the day, this council is the one that will be adopting any recommendations made following those consultations, and those consultations are being, while facilitated by BC2, it's based off of what our citizens have to say. So I understand, you know, where if there's a perceived conflict by some that maybe it muddies the water, but at the end of the day, we are the ones accountable for adopting it based on what we hear from our citizens. And I don't think, even if there was a conflict, I don't see how that can really impede residents' opportunity to express themselves.
well, I guess my concern is that we're looking at 8 months since BC2 has been working with the city. And instead of starting with citizen consultations, where you could have had everybody's input to start working on it, we're looking at citizens being consulted on 8 months of work where they've had no input. That is of concern.
I don't know why it's a concern. I just looked at the questions today for the survey that is going to be starting as soon as next week. And I think you're going to be very surprised at what those questions are. I think it's going to give us a very good initial feedback of what citizens are wanting in our cities, in our city, and it goes across a whole bunch of different subjects. So I look very forward to the consultation. I look forward to the survey coming out. We're going to have it for, I think it's about 3 or 4 weeks, Monsieur Odo,
For the
the survey.
survey online is 4 weeks.
4 weeks.
And there's
And then we're going to be going into the different consultations after that. We're just, we have 2 of the 3 dates. We just need to firm up one more, and those will be announced very shortly. So I'm looking very, I think it's going to be a great project for the city.
Are the consultations going to remove citizen rights? Like, for example, their right that exists as present to a petition?
I've answered that
register
question before, Mrs. Cornway. You're asking me to answer a question to something that I don't know. You're asking me if it will remove something prior to having a public consultation. We're going to have consultations. People are going to have their voices heard. There's going to be 3 different sessions, east, west, north. Those people in those areas will each have their opportunities to voice their opinions and their feelings about what kind of development that they want, and the questionnaire is also going to be part of that process, and that's anybody who can do that. So I look very much forward to it starting. I think it's due time that we start, and I believe that our residents have the capacity to tell us what kind of future development they want in the city.
Oh, I have no
Okay.
doubt that the residents have the capacity to tell you, but my experience with consultations held by this municipality is that it doesn't take citizens' input into consideration.
Okay, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. I think we've answered all your questions at this point. If you'd like to answer more questions, we can do so after everybody else has had questions. Mr. Nozzola.
Hello.
Good evening.
If I can add on that topic, of course, I can see Mrs. Cornway's concern when we had the consultation for the Queen of Angels project. Our former mayor sat with the contractors, and
Mr. Nozzola,
none of the recommendations made by citizens were taken into account.
Mr. Nozzola.
Zero. So that's why we have a reason for being naive, for being.
Mr. Nozzola, this is question period. You know what that means. It is question period. You have some prepared questions. I'd like you to read your questions. We're going to answer your questions.
Okay.
And we're not going to stand up here and have a soapbox. Okay?
I understand, but her concerns are very real and genuine, so you shouldn't blow them off like they don't mean anything.
Well, I've heard her concerns. Now what I need to hear is your questions.
Yeah. First question, the subject is democratic and fair. The question is for Mr. Von Goritz. I have called out our municipal council several times over the years over the biased nature in which people are appointed to the different city committees. Appointments should be granted to the best person available who has applied through an open invitation to every citizen in Dorval, not in the biased manner in which they are done now. I have specifically spoken out about the Urban Planning Committee and the terrible projects they have approved. As a very involved and somewhat knowledgeable citizen, I have asked several times to be on that committee. I feel that it would be beneficial to Dorval to have at least one person on the committee who is not directly involved in the construction industry. My requests were always rejected. Why does this city council not pass a bylaw stating that all appointments to every committee should be made available to every citizen of Dorval?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Nozzola. So I guess to say, why don't we pass a bylaw is a little premature. However, I do think there's points that you've raised there that were raised last month that have been discussed for a while about how do we get, how do we properly publicize opportunities for citizens on committees that there's merit to. That's why with the Environment Committee, that's the approach we took. We really tried to publicize it as best as possible to recruit new people. Last month in caucus and then during the meeting and since the meeting, I think some of us have expressed an interest in looking at could we do more, especially when there's spots open, because I think there's two different levels there. There's if people are returning fulfilling a position versus if we have a new opening. Maybe it's the same process, maybe it's different, but I think there's a reflection to be done there. That said, I don't think, I wouldn't be comfortable saying, yeah, I think we should pass a bylaw. Maybe it's a bylaw, maybe it's a policy, maybe it's just best practices by looking at what could we do better, what committees does this apply to, what restrictions exist, because with the Urban Planning Committee, there's restrictions that exist, but I do think it merits being better studied. But I also think that this is a question that you should be asking of my colleagues as well, because it's not just me who would be able to implement that. It would require the council to look at it.
Because you've been here the longest and you voted in favor of the Urban Planning Committee last month. You said that it's a renewal, it's a different, it's different. No, it should be for all committees. All committees, whether it's renewal of existing members or whatever, should be open, There should be no renewal of existing members. Should be open to every citizen in Dorval to apply for the Urban Planning Committee. And the best people who can serve the citizens of Dorval should be chosen. based on the applications received. You can call your friends and tell them, we want you to apply for this position. That can still happen, and you're going to still be making the decisions. But it only would seem fair that everyone has a chance to apply.
So this is why I say I think it requires reflection and looking at best practices. I mean, you've expressed that you think nobody should necessarily be renewed. I've seen it done different ways in different committees, not necessarily with the city, and I think it merits reflection upon. So I'm not saying no to it, but I am saying that I understand your point of why you're asking me, but as the council moves forward with appointments like that, it wouldn't just be me who'd have to push that.
Last month, why did you approve of the 4 people that were
Because they
that
were
were
all,
being
so
named for the
because they
urban
were
planning
all because they were all renewals. Because I have been satisfied with the interactions we've had with the committee, because at the end of the day, and this is something that's important tonight.
Okay, Mr. Nozola, let's focus on our question.
So at the end of the day, and I think this was said last month, the council is the one who accepts the report or not of the urban planning committee. Like, the urban planning committee makes a recommendation to the council. So, and you and I've spoken about accountability. We, the 7 of us, are accountable for those decisions. So that being said, the relationship I see with the Urban Planning Committee is, do I feel that if I have concerns, the Urban Planning Committee can speak to those? And whether that's through the council representatives, whether it's Mr. Lesage or Mr. Doré before him, or through the Director of Urban Planning, I have been satisfied to date with the relationship I've had with the Urban Planning Committee. Also keeping in mind, because you mentioned some past projects, keeping in mind the limitations of our current bylaws. And that's something that we've talked about before. The urban planning bylaws, can we strengthen them? What do we have to look at? Which is an ongoing project. But that's why last month, for lack of a revised project that we've spoken about, we still need an urban planning committee, and I didn't have concerns with the existing membership. I was not ready at the last month to say, yep, scrap them all, let's start and not have an urban planning committee for months. I do, however, think that in the near future, the council should have a conversation about how to appoint people to council committees to have proper recruitment of citizens.
Question number 2, Mr.
It was a
Nozola.
weak reasoning to say last month, when it's time to vote, you can't decide to scrap the committee. Of course not. You have to decide that 6 months before. Okay, we're going to be voting in 6 months for a new planning committee.
Mr. Nozola, it's time for your second question, please.
I'm not finished with that. There was 3 people on the committee who their titles were 2 architects and an engineer, I believe, and 1 person had no title.
I'll answer that question, Mr. Nozola, and then we'll move on. Our CCU, like most cities, have a committee, have qualifications that are in the urban planning field. They can be an engineer, an urban planner, an architect. There's various sub specialties in there. That's what we need. And to your point, we do have 1 resident as well who doesn't have any of those qualifications. He is just a resident who's on the committee. Okay, and we've discussed this many times
what's
before.
What's his profession? What's his title? He has no title, no profession?
He has a profession.
Yeah. So why is he on the committee?
Because we feel that it's important to have just a regular member of the community.
Just a regular. So how come I wasn't put on instead of him?
I don't know. I can't answer that.
Do you have a friendship with this gentleman? Does he have friendship? Does he have any association with Action Dorval?
Mr. Nozola, I'm not friends with the person.
No, but does he have any association with Action Dorval?
Well,
Because you put this person on the committee, there must be a reason. There must be a reason.
Nozola,
I've never seen him here at City Council talking about urban planning.
I've answered your question. I'm not a personal friend of his.
In 2021, he made a donation to Action Dorval political party. So that means there is a connection. He donated to your party.
Anybody's free to make a donation.
He donated to your party.
Okay, Mr. Nozola.
Would that be a reason to appoint him to a committee because he donated to your party? As opposed to someone like me who comes here to criticize and question your decisions?
Mr. Nozola, I can tell you that anyone in the city is free to make a contribution to the Action Dorval, Équipe Action Dorval team. Okay, any resident.
If they don't donate to your party, are they more likely to be chosen to be on a committee?
Not at all.
Okay.
Next question.
Yeah, right and just. This question again is for Mr. Van Voorts. You have always approved every appointment. Last month, you also approved the appointment of Mayor Doré and Councilors Lesage and Trudeau as the only representatives of the Demolition Committee. These 3 gentlemen always speak as one. Mr. Trudeau had at least not 2, but 3 houses demolished in his riding with no permit. One by an infamous contractor who does lots of work for the city of Dorval. Do you think it is right and just to have these 3 like-minded men as the sole representatives of the demolition committee?
Mr. Nzola, what 3, you said at least 3, what 3 properties are you talking about? Just so that we understand each other.
Sevigny,
Yeah,
St. Charles Avenue, and is it near Boylan, the little cross street there?
I don't know,
A
you're the one
huge
who brought
house,
it up.
Rockwell? Yeah.
Okay, I'll speak to Sevigny. I don't know the other 2, I'll have to research that. But Sevigny was a very unique situation. It was a house on a slab. The original plan was to rebuild on that slab. When they demolished the house, the garage that, you know the property, so the garage was very close to the Bouchard Creek. And during that process, some of the land that, and the wall, the retaining wall of the Bouchard Creek, started to fall into the creek, right? And in the process, damaged the slab. And so that project, the creek had to be stabilized, the land had to be stabilized, rebuilt, and because the foundation had cracked, because of the erosion, they had to then destroy the foundation. It became a new project. That project went to the CCU. It was approved by the CCU with minor derogations, which was subject to a referendum process in the neighborhood, and it passed. So everything that was done, albeit the situation quite exceptional, was all done following all of the rules and regulations of the city.
Are you saying there was a referendum in the neighborhood for that property?
There was no, it was a public notice. So there was a public notice and no one chose to contest the project. So
why
it
did they
passed.
demolish the house in the first place with no permit? Why?
He is,
Why if I change a window in my house, or if I cut a branch, I need to get a permit? I need to get a permit.
You are able to demolish a house if you're reusing the existing foundation, and that was always the plan.
Without a permit,
Yeah, that's correct.
But why? Why should that be?
That's
Why should
the
that be?
rules in our bylaw,
So,
because
like I
they're
said, I'm not
rebuilt.
allowed to cut a branch off a tree that I planted in my house without getting a permit. But I could demolish my house without a permit.
You would need the urban planning permit for the new build
You need it.
before you can knock the house down, but, yeah.
For the new building,
Yeah.
you need the permit. But you don't have to do an inspection of that house when you demolish it. If the house has PCBs, if they have other toxic material, you don't have to pay to have them disposed of in a proper manner. You save tens of thousands of dollars. If you don't have a permit, then you don't have an inspection. Because you don't need an inspection if you don't have a permit.
Mr. Nozola, I'll check whether or not there's a demolition report for that property.
Sorry?
I will check if there's a demolition report for that project, for that demolition on
I'm
Sevigny.
asking, if you don't have a permit to demolish a house, do you have to do an environmental study?
Environmental study?
Yeah, because
I don't think so.
Because right now, if you're demolishing a house, there's a study. If you have PCBs in there,
No, not an environmental study.
PC
You have to get a report. What a resident has to do if they want to, today, what a resident has to do if they want to demolish is to agree to the report being made on their property, which is submitted by a third party to the urban planning department as part of the process for evaluation for the demolition committee.
because my neighbor across the street wants to demolish his house. The poor guy has been arguing with the city for I don't know how many years. He was given only one company that had to do the inspection, only one option.
Okay.
Cost him thousands of dollars.
Mr. Nozola.
Cost him thousands of dollars to dispose of the PCBs and stuff in the house, asbestos. That's the word I was looking for, asbestos, because many houses have asbestos. And I'm sure that those three houses probably had asbestos, but they didn't have to do an inspection because they were allowed to knock down their house with no permit, so didn't have to do an inspection.
I'm not so sure about that, but,
You'll get back to me, okay.
well, you'll have to give me more details, give myself and Monsieur Udo more details, and we'll validate the facts.
I don't have to give you details, it's on, you have records of all the information. You
Okay,
have
next
records of
question,
the
please, Mr. Nozola.
Trust and confidence, again for Mr. Van Voorts. In 2015, it came to be known at a city council meeting that one of your fellow councilors had a small home built in her backyard with no permit and breaking several bylaws. Despite protests over the years against her breaking the law and her statement that she would take down the structure, she remained a city councilor until she decided not to run for re-election in 2021. During this time, she helped pass bylaws and voted to punish people who broke bylaws. Still, 9 years later, the structure is still there. As a city councilor, do you not have an obligation to speak out and report when a law is being broken?
I want to be careful with my answer to that question with regards to bylaws being broken, because I do think, so I think we need to set, as councillors, we absolutely need to set the example by respecting bylaws. I do not report every violated bylaw I observe, and that's why I want to be careful with my answer, because when I see a car parked for more than 4 hours, when I see somebody using their lawnmower past the time, and I don't want to, I realize that there's a difference in the bylaw.
You are doing that. You are diminishing the small house in your backyard is not the same as parking for 4 hours.
But I'm not done. I'm answering your question. So that's why I want to be careful with answering the question just broadly of, yeah, I have an obligation to report law. So I do think, as councillors, I think we need to set the example. And when we are made aware of bylaws being broken, I do think we have a responsibility to act on them. And in the case of this property, I believe, because I don't know when it was installed, I don't know if I was a councillor when it was installed, when I was made aware of it, I asked and brought it up, as did other members of council, saying, well, we need to look into this. We need we don't issue the bylaws, we don't issue fines ourselves or warnings, et cetera. We pass that on to the administration, ask them to look into it. And as far as I know, that's what was done with this case. I do not know to which point, I don't know where it currently stands, because I don't follow up on those complaints necessarily.
Fine, okay, fine. But the person who parks for more than 4 hours, his car, doesn't sit on council deciding on bylaws and deciding how to punish other people.
And so I agree, but that's why I think the very first thing I said, because I didn't want to diminish the question, that wasn't my intent. The very first thing I said is that I do believe councillors should be setting the example. And I'm guilty. Sometimes I put my compost bin out before 7 p.m., which again, I know is not the same, but I shouldn't do it. Even something that minor, I shouldn't be doing. So to your point, no, I don't think councillors, I think we should be setting the example.
What you should not have done.
Okay, Mr. Nozola, have we answered your questions?
Let her sit on city council and vote on bylaws
But
for 8 years.
I don't know
For 8 years, when she was flagrantly breaking them.
Okay, Mr. Nozola, have we answered your questions?
That sends a message that you are above the law and you can get away with anything.
Mr. Nozola, have we answered your questions?
That's the problem with that whole situation, was that she believed, and everybody around her, that we are above the law. And we can break this huge bylaw. We can build a house in our backyard with no permit because we are above the law. We can do whatever we want.
Okay, Mr. Nozola, I think he's replied to your question. Thank you. Next question, Monsieur Moreau.
Bonsoir à tous. Richard Moreau, 291 Cloverdale Dorval. Ma première question, Monsieur le maire, vous avez répondu en partie. C'est-à-dire que depuis plusieurs mois, aux différents conseils municipaux que j'écoute via les merveilleuses conférences, j'entends parler de polluants des avions, autant les avions qui décollent, atterrissent à l'aéroport Pierre-Elliott Trudeau. Effectivement, polluants au niveau du bruit, mais aussi de l'émission de nanoparticules néfastes pour les citoyens de Dorval et autres. Même certaines études, comme on l'a entendu plus tôt, démontrent l'impact négatif sur le cerveau et le poumon des fœtus, les enfants qui n'ont même pas encore respiré la vie. Dorval étant reconnu pour sa qualité de vie, quelles sont les actions concrètes prises par le conseil et l'administration de la cité au niveau de l'environnement avec vos collègues fédéraux, c'est-à-dire le ministre des Transports, l'honorable Omar Al-Gabra, qui est ingénieur mécanique de formation, le ministère de l'Environnement et Changement climatique, l'honorable Stephen Guilbeault, qui, soit dit en passant, était un ex-manifestant québécois, maintenant conseiller stratégique d'entreprise au niveau du Canada.
Monsieur Moreau, allez, c'est une période de questions, là. On comprend la question.
Bien, je fais juste positionner la question comme les autres l'ont fait. Et ici que ADM, Philippe Rainville, président directeur général et son conseil d'administration. Est-ce que Dorval prend au sérieux les plaintes au niveau du bruit et les conclusions d'études environnementales et travaille de pair avec les joueurs que je viens de mentionner?
Je pense que j'ai déjà mentionné que pour moi, on travaille avec nos députés locaux et les ministres de différents dossiers. Mais il faut comprendre que c'est un niveau de gouvernement que la Ville n'a aucune autorité. Même si 20 000 personnes de Dorval venaient me voir et me disent « on ferme l'aéroport », j'ai aucun pouvoir sur le fédéral. La seule chose que je peux faire, c'est de continuellement discuter de la dynamique avec notre député, Mme Anjou Deline, et à parler, ou essayer de parler aux ministres, Guilbeault et Al-Jabra, par lettre, et leur laisser connaître les enjeux ici à Dorval. Mais je vais être très franc, là, ils ne ferment pas l'aéroport demain.
Non, je suis d'accord.
Ils ont fermé.
Est-ce que vous n'avez profité la semaine dernière, justement, pour leur parler, justement, des différents points soulevés par les citoyens de Dorval et autres concernant l'aéroport? La semaine dernière, vous étiez à Ottawa.
Oui. Sur la présentation que j'ai laissée avec le ministre, il parle un peu de ce sujet-là. Je suis censé d'avoir d'autres discussions avec lui en début de mois de janvier. Où on a d'autres, c'est pas seulement l'aéroport, c'est pas seulement le technoparc, mais pollution, ça en était un dossier. La gestion de l'aéroport, on sait que les citoyens, il y a beaucoup de nouveaux vols à l'aéroport et on essaye de leur sensibiliser au fait que l'aéroport ne respecte pas vraiment leurs règles pour les décollages et atterrissages le soir et tôt le matin. Il y a différents sujets à discuter avec eux et j'espère que j'aurai le temps d'en discuter plus avec lui le mois prochain.
Merci.
Oui.
Aussi, depuis plusieurs années, comme vous le savez, je pratique le golf et ce, principalement au golf Dorval. Golf Dorval étant un organisme à but non lucratif.
Monsieur Moreau, à ce point-ci, je vais t'arrêter,
oui.
S'il vous plaît. Ici, je suis assis ici aujourd'hui, ce soir, comme maire de la cité de Dorval. Et la cité de Dorval n'est pas le golfe Dorval. Et je pense que ta question est une très bonne question, mais elle devrait être posée avec moi-même et monsieur Côté, monsieur Côté, hors de cette réunion ici.
La question étant, votre compréhension de la question, c'est quoi? Est-ce que la cité de Dorval contribue au golfe Dorval, monétairement parlant?
La ville contribue au golf Dorval, oui.
Oui?
Pour des investissements d'infrastructure. Ça, c'est quand même assez normal pour des golfs publics.
Mais le golf étant un organisme à but non lucratif
De la ville de Dorval.
Qui se doit de ne pas faire de profit. Ouais. Donc, est-ce que la ville doit donner de l'argent au golf Dorval pour qu'il survive?
Il demande pour une contribution pour l'infrastructure, pas pour les opérations du golf. On leur donne des subventions pour projet d'infrastructure du golf.
Donc, le golf n'est pas autosuffisant par lui-même.
Je vais vous dire que les 4 piscines de la ville de Dorval ne sont pas autosuffisantes en termes de revenus d'entrée non plus. Je peux vous... Il y a plein de choses...
C'est sûr. Donc, le golf n'est pas autosuffisant. La ville se doit de contribuer.
Pas pour les opérations du golf. Les opérations du golf sont couvertes par le golf. Quand on parle d'investissement comme les équipements, oui, on donne une subvention. Je veux vous dire, c'est un modèle qui est suivi par beaucoup de villes. La chute, le terrain public à la chute est géré exactement de la même manière que Dorval. Et écoutez, M. Moreau, le golf, c'est comme un terrain de soccer, c'est comme une piscine. C'est pour nos citoyens de bénéficier d'un privilège que d'autres citoyens dans d'autres villes n'ont pas nécessairement. Est-ce que la question est, vous voulez fermer le golf?
Bien, est-ce que le golf, si le golf n'est pas profitable, est-ce qu'on veut éventuellement le fermer?
On ne veut pas le fermer. Qui veut le fermer? Moi, je ne veux pas le fermer. Le membership de mes piscines ne paye pas pour la maintenance de mes piscines. Est-ce que je veux les fermer? Pas du tout, là.
Et non, c'est un service offert par la ville.
Exactement. Sur le golf, le terrain de golf est un service pour nos citoyens. On peut jouer le golf l'été. Cet hiver, on va bonifier l'offre de service pour nos citoyens, en offrir 5,7 km de pistes de ski qui vont être faites tous les samedis et dimanches matin. On va aussi offrir la marche, la raquette. C'est possible qu'on va même faire un petit essai avec des fat bikes. Tout ça pour bénéficier les citoyens de Dorval, pour être dehors, pour être dans la nature, pour aller voir les animaux, etc. Donc, est-ce que vous me demandez si je devrais fermer le golf parce que il coûte des sous à la ville? Pas du tout. J'ai payé les sous.
Il ne coûte pas de sous à la ville.
Pardon?
Il coûte des sous à la ville ou il coûte
je viens de répondre à la question comme 3 fois. Il coûte des sous.
OK. C'est bon.
OK. Comme les piscines coûtent des sous.
Fantastique. Ça a bien répondu.
OK.
Merci.
Dernière question pour ce soir de Mme Elizabeth Fiquet. Vous n'êtes pas dans la salle, non? Avez-vous des nouvelles concernant la sécurité proche du centre Ulivic? Est-ce que ça a été proposé et adopté pour les accidents de cette année? 2 décès de femmes inuites ne se reproduisent pas. Madame Fiquet, je peux vous dire qu'on est en contact avec la MTQ. On les a parlé le 12 décembre, le 12 octobre, le 13 octobre, le 9 novembre. On a aussi le 23 novembre. Est-ce que c'est vous? Ah, excuse.
That's okay.
That's
Continue.
good? In English or in French?
English for me.
Okay. So we're on this, what we proposed a while back is a plan where we would set up a identified path from the center to Dorval Avenue. We have that plan here. It's a document that we've sent to the... Well, est-ce qu'on l'a envoyé? On l'a pas envoyé, mais on en parle avec le ministère des Transports et pour faire to identify a safe way of getting to the Dorval Circle. We had discussions with them on October 12th and 13th. Followed up again with them on, by email on November 9th. And on November 23rd, I spoke with Madame Prou, who's the assistant for Mr. Ciccone, because we're not getting the kind of responses that we want from the Ministry of Transport. Now, what's unique about this is that this is MTQ, mostly MTQ property. We normally are not allowed to put, and this is the struggle that we have, we're not allowed to build infrastructure or to put signage on there. We are prepared as a city to buy the signage, have it designed and made in 3 languages, and install all the work ourselves. But for some reason, they're just not responding. So we are continuing. Je pense qu'on a un meeting.
J'ai d'autres discussions avec eux encore sur le passage piétonnier, le trottoir.
Yeah, that's correct. So we're planning more discussions. I think I'm going to have to speak to or send a letter or try to get the Minister of Transport on the phone before Christmas, because this is I don't understand. It's a no-brainer. It's we just need to have this. Yeah, does that answer your question?
No, that wasn't my question.
Okay, what was your question?
Last month, there was a couple of us here from Bouchard and Gallant, or Bork, Gallant, and Marion. We had questions for the council. One of the one thing that I had brought up last month was the fact that none of the 7 buildings only owned by Gaston Capital Montreal or Dorval Inc. hadn't had a fire inspection, but we did have a fire inspector come. She did examine 470, 472, and she did do Gallant. I'm not sure if she's been to Marion yet, but we are currently waiting to see if something will get done due to the various fire safety violations that they have not dealt with yet. I've been asked to come tonight because some of the tenants had planned to come with me, but they couldn't. Some were working. One of the questions that they brought up was, actually there was a couple of them that brought up, we have a number of code violations due to the renovations that are being done in 470 right now. We have had a building inspector come and check it out. However, we consider it to be a fire safety issue with these code violations because of the fact with the renovations that are being done, they're putting wires that are being crossed over. 3 wires are being done with 1 staple. The new pipes that are going in, or the PEX pipes that are going in, the hot water ones are touching the wires. And we were told by the building inspector that that could be a possible fire safety hazard in time, because with the heated water coming from a hot water tank, it's 180 degrees. That's going to melt the plastic casing on the wires. And we're wondering why the city is not looking at these building code violations.
Okay, I can tell you that we have sent inspectors to most of the properties at this point. I think there are some that still need to be reviewed. We've had the police on, not the police, the fire department on site
Yes,
as
we
well.
thank you for that.
And we're at the point of following up with them and giving out tickets if that's what's required. Now, I think there's 7 buildings there. We've completed, Monsieur Rollo has just confirmed with me, we've completed how many of the 7 at this point?
I don't have the exact amount. I know that they're going back on the 15. So by the 15, the 7 building will all be done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so all the inspections will be done, and if from our initial discussions and infractions that have been given, if none of this has been corrected, then there will be monetary infractions being given out. So we are on top of this. You said you spoke with an inspector. Do you have a name?
John.
No?
John.
John who?
I never got his last name.
Just John.
Inspector Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, we
he's
don't have that
he's
many
talked to a
inspectors, so
lot
we'll
of the
figure it out.
He's talked to a lot of us. He's explained things out when we had questions. He's taken pictures. We've sent him pictures of stuff, you know, just because we had concerns about it. The thing is that when they opened up the walls, we now have a bad infestation of cockroaches in apartments, and we're dealing with that. Because management, yeah, they send an exterminator and he places the sticky boxes, but he doesn't come back for 3, 4, 5, 6 months. And a lot of the tenants are getting upset because, you know, they're finding them on their pillows, they're in their cupboards, they're in their kitchens. We did a little research for cockroaches and found out that if you get bitten by an adult, you can end up with salmonella and other bacterial infections. And management is not doing a thing about it. He's not fumigating. He's just bringing the exterminator in when they choose, which could be 3, 4 months from now again. And we're the ones that are dealing with this.
Yeah. What building are you in?
470.
470?
Yeah.
You're not Elizabeth Piquet, you're Linda Fash?
Yes.
Linda Fash.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, well, we'll speak, we'll identify John. I mean, we only have a couple of inspectors, so we'll figure out.
Yeah,
We'll
because
do that,
it's
and we'll
things
get back in there this
We're
week.
dealing with that, because the renovations are inside, it's not getting seen, right? Except by the building inspector. But a few of us tenants have discussed this, and we want to know if anything can be put into place by the council and the city to protect low-income tenants. Because we're either being told to move. We've had tenants that are now facing reno evictions. Because, and we've had, I mean, we've witnessed a lot of stuff. Like, we had a 90-year-old tenant that sat out in the lobby on her walker for 6 hours while renovation was being done in her apartment. She's 90 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, another tenant, he's 67. He just got papers for forced eviction.
What kind of papers? Eviction?
Yeah.
Okay.
His rent's paid up, but it's because of the fact that he had renovated. He's been waiting 5 months for the renovations to get finished in his apartment, and they're not being done. They want him out. They want the older tenants out. We've already lost 5 older tenants that have been there over 10 years. And some of the newer tenants that have moved in since spring are moving because they can't handle the stress. They can't handle the rental increases. Whispers came out back in September that what they want to do is turn our buildings into mini condos, which we will no longer be able to afford. Where are we going to go? You have 194 tenants.
I'm not sure that they can do that. No. That's to convert a building into condo like that. I doubt very much that that's
because
even
we are
possible.
zoned for low income.
Okay. Would you mind coming up here and giving us your phone number so that we can
Give it to the greffier.
give it to Madame la Greffière?
Yeah.
And we will get back to you, and maybe we have a resource at the city that may be able to point you in the right direction on some of your issues. In terms of inspections, we'll continue to do them. I think the next batch is the 15th, and stuff that has already been inspected, if it has not been repaired, they'll be getting monetary infractions as well at the same time before Christmas. So.
Yeah, because the only other issue that we have is that the heat's on bare minimum, and that includes, he's another tenant, he's at 35 Marion, their building is the same. We have minimum heat. Because they won't turn the heat off.
Okay. So please give us a call, and we'll see if we can go about this in a different manner than inspectors. We might have another option in front of us.
Just a quick point for this lady. I'm not a specialist in Quebec law, but I believe that any tenant that's over 70 years old is not allowed to be evicted.
You're right, Mr. Palliser. There are rules with tenants above 70-year-old. Yeah. C'est ça.
But I would suggest you to go to la Régie du logement. They're the one who can help you. They have the Tribunal du logement, sorry, and they have the jurisdiction. Otherwise, we'll be able to meet and see what we can do with our bylaw that we already have.
Well, we did have a tenant that did go to the tribunal. He was served papers. And the tribunal ruled against him. He has a small child who is 18 months old. And his daughter, or I think it's a son, is going to expose to the renovation dust because he was basically told that he could relocate to a hotel at his own expense. He can't afford that.
Okay, I think the next step is really, we'll get in contact with you this week, and we have someone who might be able to help us, at least, if not direct help, at least point you in in the right direction on some of these issues, because I'm not an expert in what you're looking for right now. This person maybe will help us. Okay? Thank you very much. Oui, on va avoir la réponse. Je pensais que c'était là. So is there any more questions from the audience tonight? Madame Loisel, s'il vous plaît. On ne s'est pas rencontrés au Tim Hortons cette semaine. Je ne vais pas au Home Depot souvent, moi.
Je ne vais pas à Pointe-Claire souvent non plus.
Votre adresse, Madame Loisel?
Je n'ai pas posé ma question. Monique Loisel, 265 Boylan. Je n'ai pas posé ma question parce qu'elle m'est venue quand je vous ai entendu répondre à Mme Cournoyer.
All right.
J'étais curieuse de la consultation en ligne que vous voulez faire. Et ma question, c'est si vous voulez vraiment l'envoyer la semaine prochaine, on va être à 5 jours de Noël, et puis les enfants vont tomber en vacances pendant 2 semaines. Fait c'est...
On va avoir... Écoute, vous allez avoir le temps le matin, pas au travail. Vous pouvez prendre vos 10 minutes et remplir...
Mais ce que je veux dire, c'est que c'est pas le temps où les gens vont être le plus concentrés sur les réponses en ligne.
Et c'est pour ça qu'on le fait maintenant, parce que originalement, dans notre plan, c'était pour avoir les consultations ce mois-ci. Et ça, le conseil n'était pas préparé à faire des consultations publiques le mois de décembre.
Non, un questionnaire, c'est une bonne idée, mais si le questionnaire arrive à 5 jours de Noël...
Mais ça va durer jusqu'au, je pense, 16
c'est 4 semaines. Là, vous allez avoir 4 semaines à le répondre.
Oui, puis vous, quand vous recevez un questionnaire et puis qu'on vous dit vous avez 5 semaines pour répondre, si vous ne répondez pas dans les 2 premiers jours, vous allez l'oublier.
On peut dire au monde qu'il faut répondre dans 48 heures, mais actuellement, leur donner 4 semaines. C'est pas méchant, cette idée.
Alors, 48 heures le 23 décembre.
Ouais. Non,
c'est tout ce que j'avais à dire comme commentaire.
Peut-être
que je vais vous faire la suggestion que si vous l'envoyez vraiment 5 jours avant Noël, envoyez un rappel 2 semaines après.
On peut faire exactement ça. Bon, on va considérer que la période de questions est terminée et on va procéder avec le conseil. 2.1, approbation du procès-verbal de la séance tenue le 21 novembre 2022.
Ça va être...
Ah, mais il y a 3, hein?
C'est 3 procès-verbaux.
OK. Bien, Monsieur le maire, je propose qu'on approuve les procès-verbaux de les 3 dernières séances du Conseil, c'est-à-dire la séance régulière du 21 novembre 2022 et les 2 séances extraordinaires du 5 décembre 2022, telles que rédigées.
J'approuve.
Merci. 2.2, dépôt de déclaration des intérêts pécuniaires des membres du Conseil. Madame la greffière, est-ce qu'on a toutes les déclarations?
Oui, effectivement, je confirme que tous les membres du Conseil ont déposé leur déclaration d'intérêt pécuniaire à mon bureau.
Merci. 3.1, adoption du règlement RCM-94-2022.
Oui, Monsieur le maire, ce serait pour d'adopter tel que rédigé le règlement RCM 94-2022 concernant les taxes et l'exercice financier 2023.
Je l'appuie et encore, on félicite l'équipe qui a préparé tous ces travaux, comme on l'a fait la semaine passée, parce que c'est quelque chose les derniers mois pour l'administration qui l'a préparé.
Merci. 3.2, avis de motion de dépôt de projet de règlement RCM-93-2022.
Monsieur le maire, je donne avis de motion à l'effet de proposer à une séance ultérieure du Conseil un règlement sur la tarification des services municipaux pour l'exercice financier 2023, RCM-93-2022, et dépose le dit projet de règlement. Ce qui est compris dans ce règlement-là, Monsieur le maire, ce sont des changements essentiellement aux tarifications pour l'aménagement urbain, ainsi que les tarifs pour la location de la salle au deuxième étage de l'Arena Edgar Rouleau.
Merci. Et le Conseil va continuer à avoir des discussions sur ce document-là avant on l'approuve au prochain Conseil. 3.3, règlement de délégation. C'est un dépôt de rapport des décisions déléguées. Est-ce qu'on a des questions? Merci. Merci. 3.4, avis de motion et dépôt de projet de règlement RCM-71.1-2022.
Oui, Monsieur le maire. C'est concernant un avis de motion qui est nécessaire à proposer, étant donné que notre règlement de rémunération comporte une clause disant que l'on augmente les salaires d'élus selon l'IPC, l'indice du coût de la vie, de octobre à octobre pour le Québec. Alors, la Cité, le Conseil a jugé bon de modifier le règlement ou d'apporter un ajout au règlement de façon à refléter une dimension plus normale et basée sur le gros bon sens. Alors, il sera prévu que les rémunérations prévues au présent règlement seront indexées à la hausse pour chaque exercice financier d'un pourcentage correspondant au taux d'augmentation de l'indice de prix à la consommation établi pour l'ensemble du Québec par Statistique Canada, jusqu'à concurrence d'un plafond de 2,25 % par exercice financier. Merci bien.
Merci, M. Trudeau. Je pense que ça, c'est... Qu'est-ce qu'on fait aujourd'hui? C'est une très bonne décision. Il y a beaucoup de villes au Québec qui font face à le fait qu'ils avaient adopté un règlement qui augmentait les prix, pas les prix, mais leur salaire comparatif à l'IPC. Pour vous donner un exemple, dans les 3 dernières années, la moyenne était 1,8 %. Et sachant que nos employés qui ont des augmentations sur leur convention de 2,5 % cette année, les bleus et les blancs, c'est très important que le conseil ne soit pas payé plus que les employés de la ville. Et donc, je pense que qu'est-ce qu'on fait aujourd'hui, c'est peut-être la chose la plus sage à faire. So, merci, M. Trudeau et le conseil. Oui. 4.1, services et relations publiques en communication.
Mr. Mayor, I propose that we authorize the issuing of a purchase order to Enterprise Estatism for preparing a communication plan and diverse communication pieces and letters for a total amount of $25,294.50, all taxes included.
I second.
Merci. Location de machinerie lourde pour 2023.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, would be to authorize the purchase order of Ruxborough Excavation, Inc., The only bidder having submitted a bid which conforms for the rental of heavy machinery for 2023 to the total amount of $201,809.87, including tax, in accordance with its opening tender on November 28, 2022, and to approve an additional amount of $10,000, including tax, for accidentals and contingent expense that may arise during the contract.
J'appuie, Monsieur le maire, mais aussi je proposerais juste un petit ajout d'information. Ce montant-là n'est pas nécessairement dépassé au cours de l'année, étant donné que c'est pour des besoins ponctuels ou d'urgence. S'il y a un amas de glace qui se fait dans une rue, et ainsi de suite, où la cité n'a pas d'équipement pour enlever un pied de glace, comme c'est déjà arrivé il y a 2 ou 3 ans. Alors, c'est juste pour mentionner que c'est un montant global, oui, mais c'est pas toujours dépensé. Merci.
On a un peu, hein?
Monsieur Trudeau, vous avez...
Monsieur Trudeau? Écoute, il n'a même pas neigé encore cette année, puis là, on parle de coupe de gazon pour l'été. 4.3, nettoyage et tonte de gazon des parcs et espaces verts.
Monsieur le maire, je propose d'appuyer un montant additionnel de 15 024,71 $, toutes taxes comprises, au contrat octroyé à les entreprises Tony DeFeo, Inc. pour le paiement de 2 factures pour des travaux supplémentaires de nettoyage et de tonte de gazon non prévus au contrat initial, le tout totalisant un montant global de 362 472,13 $, toutes taxes comprises, pour compléter l'année 2022.
Oui.
J'appuie.
Merci. Ça, c'était pour des coupes faites à la fin de la saison. 4.4, achat de véhicules pour atelier de peinture.
Oui, Monsieur le maire, je propose d'approuver l'achat d'une camionnette Ram ProMaster blanche année 2022 chez le concessionnaire Vaudreuil Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat au montant global de 49 771,52 $, toutes taxes comprises, conformément à sa soumission du 29 novembre 2022, et de rejeter pour non-conformité majeure la seule soumission reçue du concessionnaire Olivier Ford dans le cadre de l'appel d'offres TP 2022-19 pour l'achat de 2 camionnettes pour l'atelier de peinture et la conciergerie, et d'autoriser que des démarches soient entreprises par la division de l'approvisionnement en vue de l'acquisition d'un 2e véhicule sujet à une approbation ultérieure par le conseil.
J'appuie, Monsieur le maire.
Merci. 4.5, service d'entretien de bouloir à vapeur aux travaux publics.
Monsieur le maire, je propose d'approuver la dépense additionnelle de 3 271,04 $, toutes taxes comprises, à l'entreprise GR2 Inc. pour des produits chimiques servant à tester la qualité de l'eau des chaudières indispensables au contrat du service d'inspection et d'entretien des bouloirs à vapeur pour 2022-2023, portant ainsi le montant total du contrat à 15 778,04 $, toutes taxes comprises.
J'appuie.
Merci. 4.6, entretien préventif et réparation sur demande des unités de climatisation, humidification, ventilation, chauffage et contrôle 2022.
Monsieur le maire, je propose d'autoriser un montant supplémentaire de 19 000 $, toutes taxes comprises, au contrat octroyé à l'entreprise Navy Réfrigération, Inc., pour des travaux de modification du système de ventilation à l'hôtel de ville et pour couvrir les frais de service d'entretien des systèmes pour les mois d'octobre, novembre, décembre 2022.
J'appuie, Monsieur le maire.
Merci. 4.7, mise en service et opération des contrôleurs de piscine extérieure.
Mr. Mayor, I propose that we authorize a supplementary amount of $5,547.21, all taxes included, to the contract awarded to the enterprise AESL Instrumentation, Inc. for putting into service, operational service, exterior pool controllers, as well as the replacement of specific pieces and equipment for a total expenditure for the course of the year of $38,603.32, all taxes included.
A second.
Merci. 4.8, réapprovisionnement du magasin, constat d'infraction.
Oui, Monsieur le maire, ce serait pour autoriser l'émission d'un bon de commande à l'entreprise DCM, Gestion des communications Data Corps, pour la fourniture de 3 000 unités de constat d'infraction, règlement municipal à 5,67 chacun, pour un montant global de 19 653,61 $, toutes taxes comprises, conformément à la soumission déposée en date du 15 novembre 2022.
Je seconde.
Merci. 4.9, services professionnels supplémentaires, études géothermiques des sols pour l'implantation d'une patinoire extérieure réfrigérée.
Je propose, Monsieur le maire, d'autoriser les services supplémentaires de l'entreprise Englobe Corp pour la réalisation d'une nouvelle étude géotechnique et d'une caractérisation environnementale des sols pour l'implantation est-ouest de la patinoire extérieure réfrigérée pour un montant ne dépassant pas 16 096,50 $, toutes taxes comprises, conformément à son offre de service OC03 du 8 novembre 2022.
J'appuie.
Merci. 4.10. Rejet de soumission dans le cadre d'appel offre TP 2022-30. Démolition, conception et installation d'un entrepôt à sel et d'un entrepôt de gravier.
Oui, Monsieur le maire, je propose de rejeter toutes les soumissions déposées dans le cadre de l'appel d'offres TP 2022-30 pour la démolition, conception et installation d'un entrepôt à sel et d'un entrepôt à gravier.
Je ne peux pas appuyer.
J'appuie.
Merci. 4.11, service d'entretien et de soutien des applications de plusieurs logiciels avec PG Solutions.
Je propose d'émettre une commande d'achat à l'entreprise PG Solutions Inc. au montant global de 164 853,45 $, toutes dépenses comprises, pour le renouvellement du contrat d'entretien et de soutien des applications des différents modules logiciels suivants. Accessité Finance, Accessité Territoire, Gazboy, Entretien et qualité de service, Connecteur géomatique, voilà. Excellente application pour tout le monde à utiliser lors de requêtes et de plaintes. Ludique et licence Oracle pour Ludique.
J'appuie.
Merci. 4.12, approbation d'ordre de changement. Projet d'agrandissement de l'Aréna Edgar Rouleau.
Oui, Monsieur le maire, ce serait pour autoriser des ordres de changement AM-57 à AM-66 au contrat octroyé à l'entreprise MA2D Construction Inc. pour un montant global de 205 170,94 $, toutes taxes comprises, dans le cadre des travaux de l'agrandissement de l'Aréna Edgar Rouleau.
Un approuveur.
J'appuie.
Merci. Et je pense que ça, c'est la dernière paiement.
C'est terminé.
Terminé. Excellent. 4.13, service de supervision de travaux.
Oui, Monsieur le maire, je propose de retenir les services professionnels de l'entreprise groupe Jasfort Poirier Pinchin Incorporé pour l'exécution des phases 2 et 3 dans le cadre du projet d'assainissement des systèmes de ventilation et d'évacuation du centre communautaire Sarto-des-Noyers pour un montant global de 19 632 $, toutes taxes comprises, conformément à son offre de service du 25 novembre 2022.
J'appuie.
Merci. 4.14, développement des collections de la bibliothèque de Dorval pour 2023.
Monsieur le maire, je propose d'émettre des commandes d'achat ouvertes pour l'acquisition supplémentaire de documents papier, audiovisuels et numériques jusqu'à concurrence de 263 300, toutes taxes comprises auprès des fournisseurs suivants: Librairie Monnaie Inc., Librairie Paragraphe, Librairie Clio Corporation Presse Commerce, Livre Barbare Inc., Groupe Archambault Inc., EBSco Canada Limité, CVS Midwest Tape, la Librairie du Square, la Librairie de Verdun.
J'appuie.
Merci. 4.15, réhabilitation structurale des conduites d'eau potable 2022.
Mr. Mayor, I propose that we authorize increasing the contract awarded to Fort Action, Inc. for an amount not exceeding $86,905.84, all taxes included.
Un appuyeur.
I second that.
Merci. 4.16, service de protection de notre infrastructure informatique contre les attaques cybernétiques.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we'd authorize the purchase order to Max Technology Supply, having presented the lowest service offer in accordance with the needs of the city for infrastructure protection solution, CronStrike 24/7 computer, for a total amount of $54,601.40, including taxes, for a 12-month period.
J'appuie, M. le maire, et puis je voudrais souligner le fait que la Cité d'Orval prend toutes les mesures nécessaires pour contrer toutes les cyberattaques qui ont lieu récemment, dont une majeure à la ville de Westmount, qui est maintenant depuis un mois paralysée. Excellente initiative de notre service des finances. Merci.
Très bon point. Et Laval aussi cette année, donc. 5.1, dépôt de liste de dépenses autorisées. Est-ce qu'on a des questions? Non. 5.2, approbation de virements budgétaires.
Oui, M. le maire, je propose d'autoriser les virements au poste budgétaire tels que décrits au dossier décisionnel 2022-12-17051. C'est 8 séries de virements pour l'exercice 2022 qui totalise environ 442 000 $.
Merci.
Je seconde.
Merci. 5.3, disposition de biens, véhicules, pièces de machinerie, équipements et de mobilier de bureau.
Je propose, M. le maire, d'autoriser la disposition des articles énumérés dans le présent dossier décisionnel 2022-12-01 2493 par le biais du service d'appel d'offres du Centre d'acquisition gouvernementale, le CAG, le tout conformément à la politique de disposition des biens de la cité. D'autoriser la vente de gré à gré de la génératrice numéro 235-1997 telle que décrit dans le présent dossier décisionnel. D'autoriser la vente de gré à gré des fourches à palettes, accessoires installés sur l'ancien Bobcat numéro 408, disposé en 2021, tel que décrit dans le présent dossier décisionnel. D'autoriser la disposition des articles invendus de façon éco-responsable et conformément à l'énoncé de notre politique de disposition des biens, et d'autoriser la chef de section ressources matérielles à prendre les mesures requises auprès du Centre d'acquisition gouvernementale, le CAG, et à signer tout document requis pour donner effet à la présente résolution.
Je seconde.
Merci. 5.4, affectation à la réserve pour élection.
I think this is a cool one, so I'm just going to
You go
explain.
ahead.
It's not complicated, but rather than budgeting only in election years for elections, because we have an unallocated operating surplus this year, the idea is to allocate some of that in reserve for future elections so that they're not budgeted only for election years, but in part in all the non-election years as well. So with that preamble, I propose that we assign a sum of $62,500 to this reserve for elections originating from unallocated operating surplus.
Yeah.
I second, Mr. Mayor.
Merci. Well, it's 3 years away. 5.5, affectation de l'excédent de fonctionnement non affecté.
Oui, M. le maire, je vais lire aussi l'attendu. L'attendu que certaines dépenses encourues au courant de l'année 2022 ne pouvaient être prévues lors de la préparation du budget et qu'il y a lieu d'affecter une somme de 3 millions de l'excédent de fonctionnement non affecté aux activités de fonctionnement. Entre autres, et on parle ici de la quote-part de l'agglo, et que les chiffres n'étaient pas finalisés, qu'on a reçu seulement après notre présentation du budget. Donc, je propose d'autoriser l'affectation d'un montant 3 millions de l'excédent de fonctionnement non affecté aux activités de fonctionnement, étant donné que la Ville ne peut produire un déficit lors de ses opérations normales, et cette somme devrait amplement couvrir toutes les factures à venir d'ici la fin de l'année fiscale.
J'appuie.
Merci, Trudeau. Et à ton point, on a eu une année très occupée. Travaux publics, ils ont fait plus que demandé. Et on a des projets qui sont en avance. Donc, merci.
La prière était...
M. Von Royce. 5.6, dons et subscriptions.
Je propose, M. le maire, d'autoriser une assistance financière pour un don à l'organisme suivant. Lakeshore Light Opera, au montant de 1 000 à imputer au poste budgétaire 02 110 00 340.
Je seconde.
Merci. Bon organisme qui redonne à l'hôpital Lakeshore, à la fondation de l'hôpital Lakeshore chaque année. Donc, très bon projet. 6.2, dépôt de rapport comparatif et liste de permis pour novembre. Ah, oui, 6.1. Excuse. Dépôt de procès verbal du comité consultatif d'urbanisme du 29 novembre 2022. C'est M. Bob?
C'est 6.3.
6.1. 6.1. Un dépôt, excuse. 6.2, dépôt de rapport comparatif et liste de permis, novembre.
Merci.
OK. 6.3, plan d'implantation et intégration architecturelle.
Oui, Monsieur le maire, ce serait pour approuver les recommandations du comité consultatif urbaniste telles que soumis en ce qui a trait au projet suivant. Projet de redéveloppement mixte, modification au 200 avenue d'Orval, recommandé majoritairement. Projet de construction d'une habitation unifamiliale isolée au 577 Crescent Oriole, non recommandé. Projet de construction d'une habitation unifamiliale isolée au 165 avenue Saint-Louis, recommandé majoritairement.
Je seconde.
Merci. 8.1, confirmation de la permanence au poste de préposé des permis et de l'occupation au service de l'aménagement urbain.
Monsieur le maire, de confirmer à compter du 27 décembre 2022 la nomination permanente de Hichem Lounis au poste de préposé au permis et à l'occupation au service de l'aménagement urbain, division urbanisme, permis et inspection.
J'appuie.
8.2, promotion au poste de coordinateur voirie, aquaduc et égout.
Je propose, Monsieur le maire, d'autoriser la promotion de M. Philippe Chouari à compter du 13 décembre 2022 à titre de coordonnateur voirie, aqueduc et égout au service des travaux publics.
J'appuie, Monsieur le maire.
Merci. Confirmation de permanence, directrice des loisirs et culture.
Oui, Monsieur le maire, je propose de confirmer, à compter du 13 décembre 2022, la nomination permanente de Mme Véronique Conche au poste de directrice du service des loisirs et de la culture.
Et je l'appuie avec enthousiasme. On est chanceux d'avoir l'équipe de directeurs et directrices qu'on a.
Merci, M. Von Wertz. 8.4, confirmation d'une permanence d'un agent de bureau au service administratif.
Monsieur le maire, de confirmer rétroactivement au 26 septembre 2022 la nomination permanente de Mme Suzanne Daou au poste d'agent de bureau, service administratif, rôle et taxation.
J'appuie, Monsieur le maire.
Merci. 8.5, modification de l'organigramme aux fins de créer une direction de génie au sein de l'organisation.
Oui, Monsieur le maire, je propose d'autoriser la création d'un poste de directeur de génie au sein de l'organisation et d'autoriser la division des ressources humaines à modifier l'organigramme de la cité selon les recommandations du directeur général.
Je l'appuie.
Merci beaucoup. J'aimerais remercier tout le monde ce soir. C'est le dernier conseil de 2022, so congratulations everyone. We made it through another year. Et j'aimerais souhaiter des très bonnes fêtes à tous nos citoyens à Dorval. It's been an exceptional year for everybody. I hope everyone has a great holiday season, has time to spend with the kids, and I wish everyone the best throughout the rest of the year, and we'll see you in January 2023. Et avec ça, on lève la session.
Je propose.
J'appuie.